Happy New Year to all our esteemed viewers. I am Saurabh Pramod Shah, President of Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, Western Region. We are glad and proud that today we are launching a new initiative of sharing knowledge and information with our stakeholders in form of a podcast. Friends, the world has realized the need of incorporating ESG practices in all walks of life. Sustainable development is something every leader is talking about. Today, corporates, investors, and government around the world have started to realize the need for investing in ESG practices to mitigate the risk, identify opportunities, and to ensure a sustainable future for all. In continuation of our efforts to contribute as a chamber to the cause and growth of ESG, the topic for today's podcast is ESG, a journey from Glasgow to UAE. We are indeed honored and privileged to have with us in our first podcast today Mr. Shailesh Adipatti, a veteran chartered accountant, a well-known thought leader on Indian economy and public policy. He is the chairman of New Haribhakti Business Services LLP and MentorCap Management Private Limited, and is also a board chairman, audit committee chairman, and an independent director, friends, in our country's very prominent and leading organization. He is the author of two books, Digital, Professional, and Audit Renaissance. Mr. Haribhakti is a person who strongly believes in good governance, creating a sustainable competitive advantage, and is a strong supporter of a clean and green environment. With this, I would like to place before Mr. Haribhakti my first question. Sir, during Prime Minister Modi's address to over 120 heads of countries in Glasgow on November 1st, Honorable Prime Minister said that India will increase its non-fossil fuel energy capacity to 500 gigawatts, reduce its total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons by 2030, and achieve net zero emissions by 2070. May I request you to share your thoughts on how realistic are these goals to be achieved?
Thank you very much, Saurabh, for having me on this inaugural podcast. To answer your question, the answer is a resounding yes. All these goals that our Prime Minister has set will not only be met, but they will be met much earlier than what he has projected. I think for the first time, a tall leader like him has been conservative in making the statements that he did. Because we are 9 years ahead of schedule in terms of the quantum of renewable power that we have created. What we now need to address ourselves to in India, and for this we need global support, including support from the United States, is that we need to have our grids become far more efficient. We need to get the non-peak or the non-sunlight hour power or the non-wind bearing hours power from biomass, from gas, and from less polluting propositions. We also need to make sure that while the world and so also India will need to continue to use coal, we need to make sure that the emissions and the fly ash are controlled so that the pollution, even from coal-fired power plants, can come down dramatically. There is no doubt in my mind that on the three climate risks, which all of us are fully aware of, one is, of course, the fact that we use fossil fuel-based energy. The second is that we use single-use plastic. That has to come down. And the third is that we do not permit biodiversity to flourish. Now, we need to take action and set targets on all of these three issues if we want to truly make a dent. And I'm so happy that so many companies in India have declared their net zero intentions. Many are moving into the net positive arena, trying to withdraw all the past emissions that they have made. And the first example I would like to quote is of Infosys, which is a company well known both in the US and in India for its global footprint. So Infosys is already net zero and it is moving to net positive. And I would like to leave this message for your listeners that we need to move from net zero to net positive to gross zero.
Very positive and encouraging remarks, sir. There is some reservation that we have seen amongst corporates because ESG compliance would require disclosure of some information. And we see some amount of reluctance in disclosing those information in the public domain. What are your views on this?
Absolutely not. Saurabh, there is no confidentiality about your actions to save the planet. There cannot be. In fact, people want to echo the actions as much as they can through social media, through their financial reports, through all disclosures that they make. In fact, the risk is on the other side that people don't do green wishing or green washing and claim more than what has actually been achieved. And it is very important. And it's a great point that you make and gives me the chance to say this. That we need to adopt global standards in terms of the frameworks we use for reporting so that everybody competitively is on the same platform. And two, that we should have sustainability standards from the International Sustainability Standards Board as quickly as we can get them so that the whole world feels that everybody is doing the same thing on the same platform. And then there will be truly the focus will shift on action because it's the action which will finally result in the reporting. So we need to focus on the action.
Wonderful. Well said. As the world's third biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, next only to maybe I think China and US, India is also amongst the countries most vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And in this context, if you can highlight the role of corporate for building a safer and a sustainable future, is what I would like to ask you, sir.
Fantastic question, Saurabh. Let me quote examples of companies because that is what makes this real. So take the work that the Wholesome Group's two subsidiaries in India, Ambuja Cement and ACC, are doing. They have actually accomplished the tough task of raising the water table in the areas of Kutch that they operate in. They have made sure that the space that has remained vacant as a result of mining gets converted into water bodies. They have put their task to making sure that the fly ash that we talked about briefly earlier
Yes.
does not fly out into the open world and pollute our lungs. What they've done is they have made sure that the fly ash can be watered down, converted into a slurry, and transported over whatever distance it needs to be transported on rail wagons, and then dry it at the using point so that the fly ash does not do the damage that it is supposed to do. So there is an incredible heart that corporates have taken. I will share with your listeners a, a very amazing experience I went through. We have a small town where we wanted to experiment that everybody, nobody accepted, gets onto this ESG bandwagon. From the youngest member of society to every living person there. And we managed to do that because the community got to know what actions they could take every day, how they could separate waste, how they could make sure that the right waste collection happened. They got into vermicomposting, they got into clean water, clean air. And there's a wonderful film, 5-minute film, which I would encourage everybody to look at, which talks about the experience from the mouth of a 9-year-old girl who talks about why her Madukarai is heaven on earth. This is the kind of example that needs to be replicated across all our plant sites and cities. We should take pride that we have clean water and clean air.
Very well said. Ms. Haribhakti, what words of wisdom would you have for young minds in India for innovating and inventing techniques for sustainable development?
My only advice would be get engaged deeply, fully for the rest of your life. But let me say this. The first fossil fuel company which steps forward and says that we are sunsetting all our fossil fuel assets. The first consumer goods company that says we are sunsetting our single use plastic. The first food company which says that we are doing away with chemical fertilizers and pesticides, insecticides, because that is going to cause the damage to the future. Such companies will have the best people to work within them and will have the support of investors from all over the world. This is the aspiration of the world, and this is being expressed across the globe. That let us become the example and let's take the tough steps. We know that beyond that tough step is a great, much better future and a better world for all of us to live in, for our grandchildren.
Right. So well said. Let me come to my next question. How important, according to you, is government's role in ESG? And it would be nice if you can highlight some major achievements of the Indian government in this particular corridor. Over to you, sir.
Fantastic question again. I think the whole business of ESG, which bases itself on the 17 SDGs, and as you are aware, I always drink from an SDG cup. And so this has all the 17 SDGs. So I drink my water from it.
Okay.
In this, one of the biggest highlighted SDG is collaboration. And therefore, I think this whole idea of how much is government doing, how much are corporates doing, how much are we individuals doing, how much are NGOs doing, should be eliminated. It is our task together. Everybody has to collaborate, everybody has to get engaged, everybody has to participate. Do your maximum. There is no limit to what you can do. Absolutely no limit. Every day you must live, breathe, think, act. Most importantly, act in a way that your carbon footprint is reduced, your water utilization, your consumption is meaningful, your production is safe, your employees are safe. You are operating in a way that instead of damaging planet Earth, you're contributing to making it a better place. If that mindset change can happen,
Yes.
then all these silos of who is responsible, what can government do, should we
Right.
get an incentive, all will go out the door.
Very true. Very true. May I request you to show the SDG Cup to our viewers? I'm sure they'll be delighted to see this.
This is it. This is the
Wow.
cup which has all, and this was brought out by the Mahindra Group in India, which
One.
has Rise for Good is their slogan. I would recommend that every organization should adopt this and have their own logo and their own branding for cups from which their entire staff drinks water. So everybody is reminded every day of the
Mind.
17
Yes.
SDGs.
Yes. It's a reminder. Very rightly said. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'd like to take up the next question. Sir, it is a common perception that ESG issues are secondary issues and only to be looked into by flourishing and large corporates. How do you view MSME's contribution in ESG success in our country?
You know, Saurabh, in your question lies the irony of the situation. No big corporation can successfully claim to be ESG compliant unless their entire supply chain is ESG compliant. And who is in their supply chain? The MSMEs.
Right.
Therefore, it
Right.
becomes the task of the big industry to bring in all the MSMEs that they deal with, both as suppliers and as customers. Bring in all their employees and make sure that this collaboration works. It is called Scope 3 in the ESG language. Scope 1 is what you do yourself.
Correct.
Scope 2 is what you do in outsourced suppliers and wherever you are dealing with others. Scope 3 is to deal with your supply chain fully, including your suppliers and customers. There are 4, 5, and 6 scopes, but we'll not talk about that right now. But this is so crucial. MSMEs will get engaged because they will not be able to supply to anybody if they are not ESG compliant.
So beautifully
And
characterized. Wonderful.
it will be a virtuous circle which will be created between the big boy and the MSME.
MSME. Very well said. And I think Indian MSMEs have a big role to play, a very conscious responsibility and obligation. More than 40 countries, including major coal users such as Poland, Vietnam, agreed to shift away from coal, one of the biggest generators of CO2 emissions under COP26. How is this step going to affect the renewable sector and what can we expect in future?
You know, this whole business of whether coal should be discarded or it should be phased down became a unnecessary controversy. The world cannot do without coal-based power. Let us first accept that reality, at least for the next 20 years, at
Right.
least. And it becomes a fuel which can be cleaned. So what can be done is regulations should first come in to make sure that all coal is beneficiated. Two, that carbon capture happens, carbon sequestration happens, and carbon offsets are created by the coal companies. You cannot wish away coal. More than 50% of all power is being generated by coal in China and India. And
Right.
even in the US, there is a significant component of coal based power. And so there is no going away from coal. We need to make it less polluting and then eliminate the pollution through carbon capture, through full burning, through better technology being deployed to make sure that coal is not seen as the absolutely dirty fuel that all of us imagine it to be. And in terms of continuous high quality energy availability, you cannot wish away coal for a long period of time. And therefore, let us work on becoming sensible about coal.
Very true. I think this is a very insightful response. Thank you so much. Allow me to ask you, sir, a next question. Due to an increasing demand of zero emission cars or electrical vehicles, there's a big race amongst the developing countries to attract new investment for becoming a hub of manufacturing of the vehicles. Where do you see the position for India in this race and what is the road ahead, sir?
Well, I see India really becoming a major producer of EV vehicles. We are going to start with scooters. We're going to move into three wheelers. And we are then going to move into cars over a
Ah,
period of time. Already, there is a significant demand build-up You know, the queue that there exists for Tesla cars in India is amazing. They just opened up the bookings and everybody signed up and paid a small deposit as well. So it is aspirational and it is going to happen. I just read that last week a company in China has started manufacturing EV trucks at scale. So all the transportation and logistics from the port, the heavy lifting that happens, is going to be done through autonomous EV trucks. Now imagine these EV trucks then moving onto the roads and transporting.
Correct.
So that's the future that we must look forward to in India as well. And we don't know where the breakthroughs will come from. When the large spurts in these supply, it's now a supply issue. Demand is there. There's no question that I'm never going to buy, and I would request everybody listening to this podcast never to buy an internal combustion car again. Wait for the EV car to come.
Very pragmatic and very real advice. Thank you so much. Mr. Haribhakti, our Honorable Prime Minister had stated that he expects developed countries to make $1 trillion available as climate finance to developing countries to make this transition to decarbonization. Do you think it is a responsibility of only developed nations to support decarbonization? And what is your advice on this?
Not at all. I think it is for the benefit of the entire human race that we are doing this. So all pension funds, all sovereign funds, all funds which are accumulations of people's savings should be looking for decarbonization, including all our Indian pension funds and all our Indian agglomerations of savings of people. There is no reason why anybody should go out into this world today without a lens of ESG. Absolutely no reason. So this 1 trillion, or I mean, some say that already there are $35 trillion of assets which are ESG ready. That may be an exaggeration, but what is important to realize is that going forward from this moment onwards, from every moment onwards, nobody should be making an investment or lending without having the ESG lens on. That is the new mindset that we need to encourage and create in the world to make a difference.
So beautifully said. How has Indian corporate landscape evolved in raising the corporate governance bar and equalizing with other developed nations? Where do you see the further roadmap going towards?
I think we should stop comparing with developed nations altogether. Our governance practices in the best in breed corporations in India are benchmarks. And I can rattle out at least 10 things which are benchmarks in India. For example, ours is the only country which has prescribed a form for ESG reporting. The BRSR is a first in the world. Ours is the only country which talks about 2% of corporate profits to be spent on CSR, corporate social responsibility. So there are so many of these firsts that there are in India. There are benchmarks that we are setting in governance practices, purposeful governance, stakeholder interest being looked at. This whole thrust is happening in India in a big way. What is required is that percolation, so that if it is practiced by 10,000 companies, then the world will sit up and take notice. Today, it is being practiced by maybe 100 companies. And therefore, there is this aspiration that are we number 3, number 5, number 100? We don't know. But actually, some of our companies stack up right up there. Globally competitive governance practices.
Wonderful said. Very, very encouraging. So today we are living in a world dominated by data. And it is said that data is the new gold. How is data management a key to address issues of governance?
That's a fantastic question. I think what the pandemic has revealed to all of us, sitting on boards, sitting in companies, in positions where we influence change, that we need to adopt information technology at scale. In fact, what we have realized is that we need to bring in all exponential technologies which seem to be converging because today action is being taken at a cellular or an atomic level. And because we are able to see these delta changes happening at that level, we
Right.
are able to echo them in a way
Right.
that big fundamental change can happen, productivity can be enhanced. I have seen farm productivity being raised 10x, 15x, simply by application of technology. And AI, ML, vertical farming, driven by hydroponics, driven by aeroponics, you can have 15x productivity in agriculture. The fruits that come off this, I've seen some of them, I get them to my home. It is exceptional to have an avocado being delivered at your residence every day is a delivery of converging technologies.
Very true.
It's e-commerce, it is vehicles, it is last mile delivery. All of this is driven by technology.
Very true. Completely agree with you, sir. This takes me to my last question, and this is on a topic and a subject which you are so passionate about. So, allow me to ask, digitalization is moving at a rapid speed across the country and globe. What are your views on the use of latest technology to appraise and evaluate the performance of the board?
Well, again, a fantastic question. Again, digitalization that could have happened at a normal pace in 15 years has happened in 2 years. That's a fact. And why is this so? And why will this accelerate? Because unless you can represent everything physical at an atomic or a cellular level in digital terms, you cannot see the interactions, the input output ratios, the productivity enhancement that are possible. Unless you can do it experimentally, digitally, and then bring it to bear in the physical real world. Fruit trees, for example, where do you plant them? How do you get the maximum productivity? How do you set them up for success?
Right.
That is all data led. And none of that can happen unless everything physical is digitalized. And therefore, you should not be surprised if you find at some point in time that there are two metaverses which are operating: the physical world and the virtual world, the augmented reality world, the virtual reality world, the mixed reality world, and multiple metaverses operating. For that, you need digitalization at the core. And for that, you need new devices. We've
Fantastic.
all got used to these iPads and laptops and cell phones and smartphones and better phones and all of that. But the next revolution is going to come from the Oculus type devices, which will enable us to see multiple verses and move into one universe, get out of that, move into the physical, move out of the physical, move into the digital universe. And that is the journey that the human race is trying to actually now get onto through the use of cryptocurrency, digital currencies, central bank digital currencies, the whole idea of non fungible tokens, all kind. This is all digitalization at scale. Everything is going to get digital. There is nothing to stop it. It cannot be stopped.
Very right. And I think that was fabulous. Sir, any message that you'd like to give to our viewers through this podcast?
Only one message: get engaged, save the world. We have no plan B. This is our only planet.
Wonderful. And with this, I would like to conclude this podcast session. Thank you so much. I have felt as if I'm interacting with an institution on ESG today. On behalf of the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce and on my personal behalf, thank you so much, Mr. Haribhakti, for your time and for your valuable sharing of thoughts, sir. Thank you very much.
Delighted. Thank you.